A lone woman walked the coast at night with a spear taller than her shoulders. Villagers locked their doors when they heard her steps on the stones. Some said she walked with no fear of blade or fire. Some said she fought raiders alone. Others whispered she passed through storms as if storms bowed to her. You hear her name across the north now, a real Viking woman who terrified whole villages without raising her voice. This story follows her first winter, her silent walks, her strange strength, her fights, her losses, and the reason she turned her back on every settlement that feared her. You clicked the tale of the lone Viking woman who terrified entire villages. You stay with her now. She walks toward you through the frost. You see her now, a tall figure on a winter coast. Her steps slow, her spear sharp, her eyes fixed on something past the horizon. Villages fear her. Halls whisper her name. They lock doors when she walks near. She fought raiders alone. She survived storms that broke ships. She moved with purpose. She spoke few words. You stand close to her now. You hear the stones under her boots. You feel the cold she walks through. She does not look toward you. She looks only forward. This is her life. This is her truth. Settle your breath. Slow the air in and out. Let your shoulders loosen. Find warmth in your blanket or seat. Dim your lights if you want a calm space. Tell me where you watch from. I speak softly so your mind rests while you follow her steps. If you enjoy quiet Viking stories, I invite you to subscribe, like, and leave a gentle comment. Take another slow breath. Let the coast form around you. Let the snow fall in a steady line. The lone woman moves ahead. You follow at a safe distance. Her story begins when the wind rises. Snow pushed against the coast in long waves. Ice formed thin lines on the stones. Salt wind moved through the surf with a low hiss. The lone woman stepped along the shoreline. Her boots pressed into wet sand mixed with frost. Her spear stood taller than her by a full hand. She held it with ease. Her breath left her lips in small clouds that broke in the wind. Her name was Yrsa. People in the nearby villages spoke her name in tight tones. Some feared her. Some stared when she crossed their path. Some locked doors when she neared a hall. But she walked each day without pause. She made no threat. She spoke no promise. She moved with purpose, only she understood. That morning she walked toward a small cliff where the land rose above the water. She climbed it slow. Her steps stayed steady on the frozen ground. When she reached the top, she scanned the sea. No ship moved across the gray water. No bird crossed the sky. The world felt empty. She shifted her spear to her other hand. Her fingers felt stiff from cold. She flexed them once, then held the spear again. She looked down the coast toward the small village of Groa's Bay. Smoke rose from 2 halls. Boats rested on the shore under blankets of frost. Saw no people outside. The villages here stayed quiet when she walked near. Yrsa did not move toward them yet. She turned and looked inland. Forest stood there, tall trees, thick branches. Fresh snow clung to them in heavy layers. She heard no birds, no movement, only the still wind. She walked toward the forest. Her steps left a clear trail behind her. The spearhead reflected pale light in small sparks. Inside the forest, the world held a colder silence. Snow covered the ground deep enough to reach her boots. The trees bent under weight. The branches hung low. She stepped between them with slow care. She listened for the smallest sound. She stopped when she saw a track in the snow, a thin line marked by a single foot. Light steps, too light for a grown man. She knelt to study it. Her breath touched the snow and fogged the air. "A child passed here," she said in a low voice. She rose again. She followed the track deeper. The footprints spread apart at one point, as if the child ran. The snow ahead showed a deeper imprint. She stopped again and looked at the trees. Wind pushed the branches above her. The crack of ice echoed through the forest. She gripped her spear tighter. She moved forward. She found a small shape near a fallen tree. A child with a fur cloak pulled around thin shoulders. The child sat with knees drawn close and arms over them. Snow covered their back. Yrsa stepped toward the child. "Stand," she said. The child lifted their head. Wide eyes, cold skin, frost clung to their hair. "I heard wolves," the child whispered. Yrsa looked around. The forest stayed quiet. "No wolves here, not this morning," she said. The child tried to rise. Their legs shook and they fell back to the snow. Yrsa stepped closer and offered her arm. The child hesitated, but fear of the forest pressed harder than fear of her. The child reached out and took Yrsa's arm. Yrsa lifted them to their feet. "Where is your hall?" Yrsa asked. "Groa's Bay," the child said. Yrsa nodded. "Follow me." The child stayed close behind her. They walked slow through the forest. Yrsa kept her spear ready. Her eyes moved over every branch and shadow. The child watched her with silent awe. "You walk alone," the child said. Yrsa nodded. "Why?" the child asked. Yrsa did not slow her pace. "Because the land speaks to me more than people do," she said. The child did not understand, but asked no more. They left the forest and stepped back toward the coast. Wind pushed against them, but not strong enough to slow their steps. When they reached the edge of Groa's Bay, villagers watched from doorways. Eyes followed Yrsa. Some stepped back, some whispered to each other. Yrsa walked straight toward the nearest hall. She stopped at the door and looked down at the child. "Go inside," she said. The child nodded and ran. The mother rushed out, crying with relief. She grabbed the child and pulled them into her arms. The villagers watched Yrsa. The mother looked toward her. "You found my child," she said, with shaking breath. Yrsa turned away without a word. "Wait," the mother said. Yrsa paused and looked back. "I thank you," she said. Yrsa gave a slow nod. Then she walked away from the hall. Her steps made no sound over the snow-covered ground. The villagers kept their distance. Some whispered words she did not hear. Some bowed their heads. Some closed their doors fast. Yrsa walked toward the far end of the village, where a small shed sat near the boats. She stepped behind it and leaned her spear against the wall. She sat on a low stone and watched the village from the corner of her eye. Voices grew inside the halls. The mother carried the child inside. A few men walked to the boats with tools to scrape frost off the planks. A dog sniffed along the snow near a fence. Yrsa took out a small piece of dried fish from her pouch. She ate it in slow bites. Her breath mixed with the cold air. Her eyes never stopped watching the movement of the village. A man approached her. His boots made crunching sounds in the snow. He stopped at a distance. "You brought the child back," he said. Yrsa did not answer. He shifted his stance. "Some thought wolves took the child. Some thought raiders took them. Some thought worse," he said. Yrsa looked at him with calm eyes. The child walked into the forest. "I walked after," she said. The man rubbed his hands together. "Trade ships talk about you. They speak of your walks along the coast. They speak of how you face storms alone. They speak of how you break raider shields with one strike," he said. Yrsa looked out toward the sea. "Words grow on their own. I walk, That is all. The man nodded and stepped back. Some fear you, some respect you. I do not know where I stand, he said. Yrsa lifted her spear. Stand where you choose. I walk where I choose, she said. The man bowed his head and left. Yrsa rose again. She walked toward the far side of the village. She stepped up a small hill where a large stone stood. She placed her hand on it. The stone felt cold. Snow clung to its surface. She traced her fingers along old carvings etched deep into it. This stone marked a grave, one buried many winters ago. Yrsa stood there for a long moment. Silence wrapped around her. She spoke a name under her breath, a name only she heard. She lowered her head. She let her breath slow. When she lifted her head again, she saw movement along the coast. Smoke rose from a distant ship. A long shape approached the shore. She tightened her grip on her spear. Branding sails, she said. Villagers saw the same sight moments later. Shouts rose. Men grabbed axes. Women brought children inside. Doors shut fast. Fear spread quick. Yrsa stood on the hill, her legs firm, her hand tight on the spear. She watched the ship approach. The hull cut through ice near the shore. The sail dropped. Men jumped out with boots splashing in shallow water. Their voices echoed across the coast. "Raiders!" someone shouted from the village. Yrsa stepped down the hill. She walked toward the shore. Slow steps, spear steady in her hand. Villagers hid behind their fences and walls. Eyes watched her move. The raiders stepped onto land. They spread into a line. They held axes and round shields. Their leader stepped forward. He wore a helm with a metal nose guard. His beard hung in long, thick lines. He pointed at Yrsa. "You," he said, "you stand alone." Yrsa stopped a few paces from them. "Leave this coast," she said. The raiders laughed. "One woman speaks to us," the leader said. Yrsa held her spear in both hands. "I face all who step here," she said. The leader pointed his axe at her. "We come for silver. We come for food. We take what we want." Yrsa raised her spear. "Not here." The raiders charged. Their boots hit the stones. Their shouts filled the air. Yrsa moved fast. She stepped to the side and thrust her spear through the first man's shield. The wood cracked. He fell back with a cry. She pulled the spear free and struck the second man across the head. He dropped to his knees. The leader swung his axe. Yrsa blocked with her spear shaft. The blow shook her arms, but she held strong. She pushed against him and forced him back a step. Another raider rushed at her with a short blade. She kicked him in the chest. He fell on his back. The villagers watched from hiding. Fear mixed with awe. Yrsa turned her spear and struck the leader in the ribs. He gasped. She hit him again. He fell to one knee. She stepped close and pressed the spear tip to his throat. "Leave," she said. He spat blood. "Who are you?" he asked. Yrsa did not blink. "Leave." He signaled to his men. They lifted the wounded. They backed toward their ship. They pushed it off the shore and climbed aboard. The sail rose again. The ship drifted away. Yrsa watched until it faded into the gray. Villagers stepped out slowly. They stared at her in silence. She turned toward them. Some bowed. Some stepped back in fear. The mother of the child stepped out and held her child close. "You saved us," she said. Yrsa shook her head. "I walk here. What comes to this coast meets me first." The villagers did not speak. Yrsa walked past them. Her spear pointed toward the earth. Snow crunched under her feet. She stepped beyond the village and back toward the long stretch of coast that waited for her next path. The sea wind reached her face again. She lifted her head. Her breath stayed steady, her eyes fixed on a distant point only she understood. The villagers watched her leave. Their whispers returned once she walked far enough. Some called her shield of the coast. Some called her ghost of storms. Some feared the strength they saw. Some wondered what pain shaped her into the lone woman who walked without pause. Yrsa did not hear them. She walked with her spear. The snow fell light around her. The sea spoke with slow waves. The land stretched ahead. She followed it without fear. Yrsa followed the coast until the village behind her faded from sight. Snow rolled across the stones in thin sheets, pushed by soft wind. The tide moved in long, slow waves. Driftwood knocked against the shore with hollow taps. Her steps stayed steady. Her spear moved with each stride. Her breath left her mouth in quiet trails. She stopped at a stretch of broken rock where cliffs rose sharp on both sides. She listened. The air held a faint sound that did not belong to wind or water. A soft tapping, slow, uneven. She tightened her grip on the spear and stepped toward the sound. The rocks opened into a narrow inlet where a man knelt beside a fallen net. He wore a thick wool tunic and boots patched many times. His hair hung long over his face. His hands shook as he tried to lift the net from the stones. Yrsa watched him in silence. The man looked up. His eyes widened. "Do not strike," he said in a trembling voice. Yrsa lowered the spear slightly. "Your net stuck," she said. He nodded fast. "A storm took the boat. The net washed here. I try to save it. I have no food in my haul if I lose it," he said. Yrsa stepped closer. She bent down and lifted the heavy wet ropes in both hands. The man tried to help, but she pulled the net free with one strong motion. He stared at her. "You hold that weight strong." Yrsa stepped back and placed the net beside him. The storm made the stones slick. "You pull on dry ground," she said. He nodded and gathered the net. "Is it true you faced raiders this morning?" he asked. Yrsa looked toward the distant coast. "They stepped on the wrong shore," she said. He swallowed and lowered his gaze. "People fear your strength, but I say strength should walk near us, not against us," he said. Yrsa did not answer. She turned toward the cliffs. "Rest in your hall. The net holds," she said. He bowed his head and watched her walk away until she vanished behind the rocks. Yrsa climbed the cliff path. Snow thinned along the rise. Grass poked through in small patches. Wind slid over the top with a smoother rhythm. She reached the flat ridge and looked inland. The land stretched in long, white fields. A few farms stood far apart. Smoke rose from two of them. The sky held a pale silver tone that hinted at weak sun behind the clouds. Yrsa walked the ridge for a long time. Her steps stayed slow but firm. She paused when she heard the crack of wood, not a branch, not frost, a heavier break. She shifted her spear and stepped toward the sound. The snow thinned at a small slope where a fence lay broken. A cow stood trapped inside the broken rails, its leg stuck under a fallen beam. It kicked in panic. Snow sprayed with each movement. A woman stood beside it with both hands on the beam, trying to lift it. Her arms shook. Her breath came fast. She did not see Yrsa yet. Yrsa stepped down the slope. "Move," she said. The woman turned. Her eyes widened with fear. "I do no harm." "Move," Yrsa repeated. The woman stepped aside. Yrsa knelt and placed both hands under the broken beam. She lifted. Snow slid off the wood in heavy lumps. The cow pulled its leg free and stumbled away from the fence. The woman reached for the animal. "Easy, Fenny, easy," she said. The cow moved behind her and stood with trembling legs. Yrsa let the beam fall to the snow. The woman stared at her. Her fear faded. Her shoulders lowered. "You walk alone in weather like this," she said. Yrsa nodded. The storm slowed. The land needed hands. I walk where work waits. The woman smiled faintly. Fenny eats again. My hall stays warm one more night. I thank you. Yrsa looked toward the fence. Your rails need repair. If the next storm hits before you fix them, more breaks follow, Yrsa said. The woman nodded. My husband and sons travel south for trade. I mend what I can, but wood breaks fast. Yrsa turned. Find branches before the snow grows deep again. The woman hesitated. People fear you, the woman said. Yrsa looked back at her. People choose fear when they want stories more than truth. The woman lowered her eyes. I choose truth. You help more than you harm. Yrsa walked toward the ridge again. The woman watched her long after she left. Yrsa followed the ridge until she reached a point where the land dipped toward a frozen stream. She climbed down and saw a group of tracks pressed into the snow. 3 sets, heavy, deep, men with wide steps. She knelt and touched the prints. Axes on their belts, she said. She followed the tracks. They wove through the trees. Snow weighed branches down and bent them in low arches. She moved through them with slow care. The tracks reached a clearing with a broken cart. 3 men stood around it. One held an axe. One dragged a sack. The third leaned against a tree, his breath heavy. They turned when they saw her. She walked forward with her spear pointed at the ground, but her stance ready. The man with the axe stepped forward. We want no trouble. The wheel broke. We try to lift the cart, he said. Yrsa looked at the sack. What you carry? She asked. He opened the top. Inside rested bundles of dried roots and fish, food for the next 3 days. Our haul runs low, he said. Yrsa stepped closer and grabbed the broken wheel. She lifted it. The men stared. You fix the axle first. The wheel holds once the bar sits straight, she said. The man with the axe knelt and set the bar right. Yrsa pressed the wheel into place and turned the peg until it clicked into the notch. One of the men gasped. You move heavy weight with ease, he said. Yrsa stepped away. Your haul sits far from here. Walk slow. Do not let the snow take your steps, she said. The men nodded fast. Thank you, one said. Truly. Yrsa moved past them and followed the stream. Her spear scraped the ice once. Her breath drifted upward. The day turned brighter. Clouds thinned. A faint glow sat behind them. The land held quiet now. No storms, no raiders, no wolves. Yrsa stopped at a rise where a tall stone stood alone. Snow gathered at its base. She brushed the surface with her hand. Carvings sit deep in its face. Marks of a spear. Marks of a name. Marks of loss. Her expression shifted. Her jaw tightened. Her breath slowed. She knelt in front of the stone. I walk where you walked, she said. Wind touched her hair. I stand where you stood. I carry the spear you held. She placed her hand flat against the stone. I face storms alone like you once faced them. She lowered her head. I do not forget. She rose again. She gripped the spear tighter. She stepped away from the stone. Her steps grew slower now, not from fear, but from memory. She walked farther until the forest opened to a field. A small hall stood at the far end. Thin smoke rose from it. She approached. She saw no movement. Doors shut, windows covered. She knocked once with the butt of her spear. A man inside spoke. Who stands there? Yrsa answered. One who walks the coast. Open. The door cracked. A face appeared. The eyes widened. Yrsa. She nodded. Your hall quiet. Why? The man looked behind him. A man inside lies sick. Heat leaves him. He coughs blood. We fear the end, he said. Yrsa stepped inside. The hall smelled of herbs, smoke, and stale air. A man lay on a bed near the fire. His skin flushed with fever. His breath shook. His wife sat beside him with a cloth in her hands. Yrsa knelt beside the bed. She placed 2 fingers on the man's wrist. His pulse jumped with uneven rhythm. Boil water. Lay out dried willow bark. Open the roof vent. He needs clear air, she said. The wife rushed to work. The man who opened the door fed the fire and brought water. Yrsa sat beside the sick man. She held the spear across her knees and watched his breath. She dipped the cloth in warm water and placed it on his forehead. "Breathe slow," she said. He gasped and shifted. Yrsa waited. The room warmed. Steam rose from the bowl. The smell of willow bark drifted through the hall. Hours passed. The fever dropped. His breath steadied. His eyes opened weakly. Yrsa looked at him. "You wake," she said. He nodded weakly. "You watch over me," he whispered. Yrsa stood. "I watch the land. You rest now." The wife placed her hand over hers. "You saved him." Yrsa shook her head. "Time saved him. I only waited with him." The man at the door looked at her. "Stay, eat, rest with us." Yrsa stepped back. "I walk with the day. You watch him. Keep the air warm." They nodded. She left the hall. The door closed behind her. Yrsa walked toward the forest again. The sun dipped lower. Light faded. The cold grew sharper. She lifted her hood and moved toward the coast. When she reached the shoreline, she stopped. The sea moved slow. The sky turned gray. She looked out far beyond the waves. Her breath slowed. "You fear me because you do not know me," she said to the empty air. Her voice drifted across the stones. "But I keep your halls alive. I watch your land. I face your storms." Wind pushed her cloak. Snow brushed her boots. Yrsa walked again. Slow, steady, alone. Snow thickened in the late light. Small flakes drifted down with slow motion. Yrsa moved along the ridge above the coast, her spear resting in her hand. Her boots sank into fresh powder that softened each step. The sea below moved in long, slow strokes. The wind hummed against the stones. She stopped when she reached a tall pine that leaned toward the water. Its trunk split during the storm. A deep crack ran through the bark. Needles covered the snow in dark patches. Yrsa placed her hand on the trunk. "You held through the storm," she said. She looked around. No voices, no movement. A faint smell of smoke drifted from somewhere inland. She listened. The smoke came from more than one fire. Not one hall. Many. She stepped toward the scent. The air grew thicker with the smell as she walked. The ground grew uneven. Snow hid dips in the land. She tested each step with her spear shaft. The ground held. She reached a hill that overlooked a wide valley. In the valley stood the village of Arnsfjord. Smoke rose from every hall. People moved in the open. Men carried buckets. Women gathered furs. Children ran across the snow. Their voices carried faint but clear. Yrsa narrowed her eyes. The village moved in haste, not calm work. She stepped down the hill with long strides. Snow pressed around her legs. When she reached the main path, people noticed her. A man pointed. A woman grabbed her child and pulled them inside a hall. Others stepped aside. Some stared but did not speak. Yrsa walked straight toward the group of men gathered near a pile of stones. They lifted the stones and placed them in a ring around a fire. Their breath steamed in the cold. One of them turned and froze. "Yrsa," he said. She stopped a few steps away. "Why the work? Why the rush?" she asked. A man stepped forward, his face lined with age, his beard gray, his hands calloused. "A beast came down from the high forest," he said. "A white one, taller than a man. We heard its roar in the night. It came close to the sheep pens. It left tracks as wide as a shield." Yrsa tilted her head. "You saw it?" The man nodded. We did not face it. We hid. We fear it returns tonight. Yrsa stepped closer. Where the tracks? The man pointed toward the far edge of the village, where the land rose steep toward the forest. Yrsa walked past them without a word. The men watched her in silence. She approached the hill where the track started. Snow lay thick but disturbed in a wide pattern. Deep prints cut into the ground, the shape broad, the steps heavy. Yrsa knelt. She brushed the snow aside. Bear, she said softly. A large one, winter-hungry, storm-driven. She rose. She looked toward the dark forest where the tracks led. She stepped into the trail and followed the path. Branches hung heavy with ice. Snow fell from them as she passed. The air inside the trees held a deeper cold. Her boots pressed into the tracks. She touched one with her spear shaft. It ran deeper than her own step. A hungry bear walks without fear, she said. She kept walking until she reached a clearing. Snow lay flat here. At its center were marks where the bear rolled or fought something. Claw marks tore the ground. She spotted blood. Not much, a small trail, drops only. She crouched and studied it. Bear injured, she said. She followed the trail of blood. It led to a broken log. Something scraped the bark. The bear leaned here, she thought. She heard a low sound, a deep rumble, not loud, not close, but enough for her to stand straight and grip her spear. The sound came again, from deeper in the forest. She stepped toward it. The trees thinned. A slope led up toward a rock outcrop. Snow lay disturbed here too. She climbed the slope with slow steps. The rumble grew louder, a warning, a breath of anger. At the top, she saw it. A white bear stood near the rock, taller than any she faced before, its fur thick, its eyes dark with hunger and pain. Blood stained one shoulder. It turned toward her. Yrsa planted her spear in the snow. Her breath slowed. You walk near people. You bring fear. You bleed from a wound. You seek food where none waits, she said. The bear growled and stepped toward her. Yrsa tightened her grip. I stand here. Turn away or face the spear. The bear roared and charged. Snow exploded under its steps. Yrsa struck first. She thrust the spear forward. The tip cut into its fur and hit its wounded shoulder. The bear roared with pain and swung its massive paw. Yrsa stepped aside, but the force grazed her cloak and sent her back a step. She planted her foot and braced the spear again. The bear lunged. She rolled to the side. Snow erupted. She thrust upward into its side. The bear fell to its knees, shuddering. It rose again, its breath heavy. Blood dripped on the snow. Yrsa moved behind it. She struck its other side with the butt of the spear to push it away from the village direction. The bear stumbled further into the forest. She pointed the spear at it. Leave the valley, walk toward the high ridge. Follow the river away from halls, she said. The bear swayed. It gave a low, exhausted rumble. It backed away, step by step, until it turned and vanished between the trees. Yrsa stood still until the forest grew silent again. Snow fell in small flakes. She lowered her spear and breathed slow. When she walked back toward the village, the men waited near the path. They watched her from a distance. One stepped forward. You faced it. Yrsa nodded. It walks away now. It will not return tonight. The man bowed his head. We owe you. Yrsa shook her head. You owe the winter. It tests you. You meet its trials. I walk its edges. A woman approached with a basket of dried meat. She held it out to Yrsa. Take this, for your strength. Yrsa lifted a piece. She tasted it. Salt and smoke filled her mouth. The woman lowered the basket. Take all. Yrsa took 2 more pieces. I need no more, she said. Villagers stepped aside as she walked past them. Some watched her with fear, others with respect. She left Arnsfjord and returned to the ridge. She walked with slow steps. Her cloak brushed the snow. Her spear glinted under pale light. At the top of the ridge, she stopped. She sat on a stone and watched the valley. Smoke rose from the village in soft lines. The forest behind her held no sound. She pulled the dried meat from her pouch and ate. Her breath warmed the cold air. "You fear me because I walk alone," she said to no one. She held her spear across her knees. "But I walk because I hold what others fear to face." She stayed there until the sun dipped behind the hills. Then she rose again and walked along the ridge until she reached a small rock shelter she knew well. A hollow between two boulders. Protected from wind, snow lined the edges. She sat inside. She closed her eyes and let her breath steady. Night formed across the land. Wind moved like a long whisper. She rested with her spear beside her. "Tomorrow waits," she said. The snow fell in quiet lines. Yrsa slept sitting upright, ready for any sound. Dawn came with thin light along the ridge. Yrsa woke in the rock shelter with ice on her cloak. Her fingers felt stiff but strong. She lifted her spear and stepped out into the open. Snow lay over the land in a smooth sheet. The sea below moved slow and gray. Smoke rose from distant halls. She stood for a moment and listened. No storm, no roar of beasts, no shouts from villages, only the soft hiss of wind across snow. She breathed in and let the cold settle in her chest. Then she walked. Her steps turned inland this time, away from the coast, toward the valley where she once lived with others. Her feet knew the path without thought. Her eyes stayed fixed ahead. Each breath marked another memory that stirred. The land dipped toward a frozen river. She followed its edge. The ice held fast. A thin line of water moved under the clear surface. She saw old tracks near the bank, sled marks, boot marks, all softened by new snow. She reached a bend in the river where a single stone jutted from the bank. Carvings ran along its side, 4 lines, a simple mark for a family. Yrsa slowed. Her hand reached out. Her fingers brushed the stone with care. "I remember," she said. She stood there in silence. Her mind walked years back, to a hall that sat on this rise, to smoke that rose straight in calm air, to voices that held no fear, to a man who laughed loud and a child who clung to her arm. The hall no longer stood. Fire took it in one night. Flames from raiders who came with no warning, men with axes, women who carried torches. They burned first, then they took. Yrsa had been away then, out with her spear beyond the ridge. She returned to ash. She found no bodies, only black beams and the stone that now stood alone. She pulled her hand from the stone and looked up the rise. Snow covered the place where the hall once stood. Only small lumps marked where posts sank into the earth. She climbed the slope and stood at the center. "This was my roof," she said. "This was my fire. This was my bed." Her breath shook once, then it steadied again. She knelt and pushed snow aside until she felt charred wood. She lifted a piece. It broke in her hand. She let it fall. "I walked away from this," she said. She rose and looked over the valley. Villages lined the low ground now. New halls, new smoke, new families, all lived under the same sky that watched her hall burn. She turned and walked down the slope. The river waited. She followed it again toward the wider valley. Her steps grew slower. The memories clung to her shoulders like weight. By midday, she reached a crossing where a broad plank lay over the ice. A man stood there with a staff in his hand. He blocked the path. His cloak blew in the light wind. His hair held streaks of gray. His eyes watched her with a mix of anger and fear. Yrsa stopped a few paces away. "Move," she said. He shook his head. "You walk near our halls. Our children speak your name at night. They wake with fear. They say you bring storms. They say raiders follow you," he said. Yrsa frowned. "I drove raiders from this coast." He tapped his staff on the plank. "Raids grow worse since you came alone. Before, they passed by. Now they test us. They look for you, and we face them in your shadow." Yrsa stepped closer. "You think my spear draws them?" He nodded. "Men love stories. They chase strong names. They speak of the lone woman with a spear. They hunt fame. They burn halls to claim it." Yrsa felt her jaw tense. "I did not call them. I only answer them." The man's gaze did not soften. "Answer them away from our homes. Walk far from our doors. Leave us to our own strength." He stepped off the plank and pointed downriver. "Take that path. Do not cross here again." Yrsa looked at the river. She looked at the man. His hand shook, but he did not step back. "Your name," she said. He held his staff tighter. "Hrolf." Yrsa nodded once. "You fear for your kin. That holds weight. I walk away today, but raiders still smell weak halls. They still read easy coasts. Your fear does not stop them." She turned from the plank and followed the riverbank. Snow crunched under her boots. Hrolf watched her go. His breath came in quick bursts. Then he turned and crossed the plank toward his hall. Yrsa walked until the sun dipped lower. The valley opened into a marsh where reeds rose through snow in thin lines. She stepped careful. Ice rimmed the small pools. She used her spear shaft to test the ground. The marsh held. She saw smoke ahead. A small hall stood alone on a dry mound. No fence, no animals. Only one crooked tree beside the door. She approached. A woman stepped out, older than Yrsa, lines carved into her face by time and winter. She looked upon Yrsa without fear. "You come late," the woman said. Yrsa stopped. "You expected me." The woman nodded. "You walk this valley each season. You always avoid this hall. Today, your feet turn here." Yrsa studied her. "You know me." The woman smiled, faintly. "Your hall burned above the river. I saw the smoke that night. I heard the shouts from raiders. I saw you return with ash on your hands." Ursa's throat tightened. "You watched and did nothing." The woman shook her head. "I had one child sick in my bed. I had one old mother who held no strength. I guarded my fire. I guarded my 2 lives." Ursa's grip tightened on her spear. No one came. No one faced them. No one helped. The woman stepped down from the mound and stood closer. "You were not the only one who lost that night. They burned my brother's hall, too. They took his sons. They left us to count empty places at our fires." Yrsa's eyes narrowed. "Then why hold no fear of me when others do?" The woman's gaze stayed steady. "Because I know grief when I see it. You walk with it as with a second spear. Fear belongs to those who do not know its touch." Yrsa exhaled. "Why no fence? Why no herd?" The woman looked back at her hall. "My sons left for trade seasons ago. I sent the herd with them. I keep only myself and the memory of them, and I keep a bed for travelers who walk this low ground." She looked back at Yrsa. "Come in, sit, rest your legs. Your spear waits by the door." Yrsa hesitated. Her feet stayed rooted. She had walked alone so long that the thought of a shared fire felt like a path she left behind. The woman turned. "You choose. I sit inside with stew and silence. You stand with snow and silence. Both hold their own weight." She stepped into the hall. Yrsa stood outside for a long moment. Snow fell softer now. The wind quieted. The smell of warm broth drifted from the open door. She stepped forward at last. Inside, the hall held one fire pit, one bed, one bench. Herbs hung from the beams. A pot rested over low flames. The woman stirred it with a wooden spoon. "Lay your spear there," she said, pointing to the wall. Yrsa leaned the spear against the timber and sat on the bench. "You know my name." "Yours," she said. The woman smiled. "Signa," Yrsa nodded. "You feared nothing when I came." Sina shrugged. "A spear in your hand saves those along your path. Fear belongs to raiders who bring flame, not to one who drives them away." She filled a bowl and handed it to Yrsa. The broth held root pieces and fish. Steam warmed her face. She drank in slow sips. "You face beasts, storms, men with axes." "That tale reaches many ears," Sina said. Yrsa set the bowl down. "Villages fear me," Sina nodded. "Fear comes easy when people greet someone they do not share bread with. They see you from far. They fill gaps with their own stories." Yrsa stared into the fire. "They say raiders follow me." Sina tilted her head. "Do raiders follow you?" Yrsa's jaw grew tight. "They seek tests. They hear of a woman with a spear who walks alone. They hope to break me. They hope to carry my name as a boast." Sina's eyes grew hard. "Then the fault sits with them, not with you." Yrsa looked up. "Hrolf says I should walk far from halls." Sina laughed once. "Hrolf fears any shadow that moves taller than his own." Yrsa's lips shifted in the barest hint of a smile. "You know him," Sina nodded. "He grew in this valley. He always watched storms from inside doorframes." She sat opposite Yrsa. "Tell me," she said, "why did you not rebuild your hall on the river?" Ursa's eyes darkened. "I walked the land instead. I took my grief and my spear and moved. Halls mean roots. Roots mean more to lose." Sina listened in silence. Her face softened. "So you gave your strength to the whole coast, to every farm, to each path that needed a watch." Yrsa shrugged. "I walked where feet lacked." Sina nodded. "Then they owe you more than fear." The fire popped. The smell of stew filled the hall. Yrsa spoke again. "And you, why do you stay here, alone?" Sina looked at the beams. "I keep a place where those who walk far find rest. Traders, hunters, women who flee bad halls, men who lost ships. They sit where you sit. They share talk. Then they leave lighter." Yrsa watched her. "You mend others and stay alone." Sina shrugged again. "Some choose quiet work, but I do not walk as far as you." Silence settled between them. Not heavy, not sharp, only steady. Outside, the wind shifted. Yrsa sensed it. She lifted her head. "Storm." Sina shook her head. "No storm. Smoke, more than one hall." Yrsa stood and took her spear. "From where?" Sina closed her eyes for a breath. "South, near the bend where the river meets the wide shore." Yrsa moved to the door and stepped outside. The sky held a dull glow. In the far distance, a faint line of darker smoke rose. She tightened her grip on the spear. "Raiders again," she said. Sina stepped beside her. "You go." Yrsa nodded. "I go." Sina placed a hand on her arm. "They blame you for raiders who seek their own fame, but you still step toward fire." Yrsa looked at her. "I still step." She walked away from the hall and into the open marsh. Snow crunched under her feet. The spear moved in her hand with sure weight. Smoke marked her path. Her pace grew faster. The land feared her shadow. The sea whispered her name. Raiders sought her. Villages blamed her. Yet she walked toward the new smoke. She did not turn back. Yrsa moved across the marsh with long steps. Snow reached her boots. Ice cracked under thin layers. She kept her spear ready. Smoke drifted from the south in a sharp line that rose straight in the cold air. The smell reached her before she reached the first rise. It carried ash and burned wood. It carried loss. She climbed the rise and looked down on the broad field beyond. A hall burned at the far edge. Flames took the roof. Sparks rose into the sky. People ran in the open. Some carried buckets, some cried out. Others pulled children through the snow. She saw no raiders yet, only panic. Yrsa stepped down the hill and crossed the field fast. Snow sprayed behind her. Her breath moved in short bursts. A woman ran toward her with a child in her arms. The woman's hair shook. Her voice broke. "Help us!" Men came with torches. They struck the front door. They broke through. They took 2 boys. They ran toward the river, she said. Yrsa pointed with her spear. "Which way?" The woman raised her arm. Along the fence, then toward the stones near the shore. Yrsa sprinted. Her feet hit frozen earth with steady force. She passed the hall. Flames roared through the open roof. Heat blasted from the walls. Men threw water on the fire. Steam shot upward. No one looked at Yrsa. All eyes stayed on the flames. She reached the fence line. Tracks cut deep in the snow. 5 sets. Heavy steps from men with weight on their backs. 2 lighter sets. Children, dragged or pulled. Yrsa followed the tracks toward the river. Her mind held no noise, no fear, only steps, only the path, only the spear. The river sat ahead as a wide frozen sheet. The tracks turned right and followed its edge toward the stones near the bend. Yrsa ran faster. Her lungs burned. Her breath held sharp edges. Then she heard voices. Men speaking in rough tones, a cry from one child. Yrsa gripped her spear tighter. She slowed near a cluster of boulders. She kept low. She stepped behind one stone and listened. A raider spoke first. "They fear this valley. They fear the woman with the spear. They speak her name. They hide from her. If we bring these 2 boys north, they pay us. They give us land." Another raider laughed. "If she fights us, we win more honor. We crush her. We take her spear. We hold it as a mark." The child cried again. Yrsa stepped out from behind the stone. The raiders froze. 5 men, one with a scar across his cheek, one with a long axe, one thin and tall, 2 stockier. Each held a knife or club. 2 boys stood near them with tied wrists. The man with the scar smirked. The ghost woman of the coast. "You walk fast." Yrsa raised her spear. "Release them." The tall man pointed at her. "If we take you, we rise in the north. If we fall to you, our names still reach halls. Either path feeds our pride." Yrsa did not move. "Release them." The man with the long axe stepped forward. "Fight us then." Yrsa thrust her spear at him first. The tip struck the head of his axe and knocked it aside. He stumbled. She swung, the shaft across his jaw. He fell into the snow. The 2 stockier men charged from the sides. Yrsa pivoted. She thrust the butt of the spear into the ribs of one. Air rushed from him. He dropped to his knees. The second swung a club at her head. She ducked. The club hit the boulder behind her with a hard crack. She drove the spear tip into the snow near his foot. He jumped back. The tall raider lunged at her with a short blade. Yrsa stepped into his reach. She struck him with her elbow. He fell backward and dropped the blade. The man with the scar grabbed one child and pressed a knife to his arm. "Stop," he said. "You move again, and he bleeds." Yrsa kept her spear leveled at him. "Release him and walk away." The scarred man pressed the knife harder. The child cried out again. Yrsa stepped forward once. The man shouted, "One more step and I take his arm." Yrsa froze. The wind died. The river held silent. Snow drifted around them. Her breath slowed. "You want my name, you want my spear, you want the tale you think you win," she said. The scarred man smiled with broken teeth. Yes. Yrsa lowered her spear to her side. She let it rest in the snow. She stood straight. Take your shot then. The man blinked. The others watched with wide eyes. You give up. Yrsa shook her head. No, I stand. Strike me without fear. You need no child for this. The man hesitated. His face shifted. The boy trembled in his grip. I take both, he said weakly. Yrsa took one slow step forward. Strike me, take your glory, claim your boast, but face me without a shield of children. The scarred man moved the knife from the boy to Yrsa. His hand shook. She lifted her empty hands. Fight me clean, she said. He lunged. Yrsa twisted to the right. The knife passed her sleeve. She grabbed his wrist. She turned it down and struck his elbow with her palm. His arm buckled. The knife fell. She kicked his leg out from under him. He fell on his back with a shout. Yrsa pressed her boot on his wrist. He grunted and stopped moving. The other raiders froze. One crawled backward through the snow. One reached for his dropped axe. Yrsa spun and kicked the axe aside. Leave, she said. They stared at her. Now. All four scrambled away. They ran along the river. Their steps slipped on ice. None looked back. Yrsa turned to the boys. She knelt. Their wrists stayed tied with rope. She took a knife from the snow and cut the knots. You safe now, she said. The older boy shook. He lifted his eyes. You fought 5 men alone. Yrsa nodded. They carry pride. Pride blinds. Pride weakens. You walk with no pride. You walk with hands free. The younger boy hugged her arm. His breath shook. You walk with us to the village, he asked. Yrsa rose. Walk behind me. Stay close. She led them across the field again. Smoke still rose from the hall. Flames lowered now. Men poured water on the last beams. Women gathered blankets. Children sat near the fence with wide eyes. When the villagers saw the boys, cries filled the air. The mother ran first. She fell to her knees and pulled the boys into her arms. She held them so tight that their faces sank into her cloak. Tears marked her cheeks. Thank you, she said to Yrsa. Thank you. Yrsa looked at the burning hall. You rebuild, she said. The woman nodded. We rebuild stronger. The father of the boys approached. His hands trembled. His face looked worn. You fought them alone. You brought them back, he said. Yrsa turned her head. They follow pride. Pride feeds raids. Not me, the father nodded. We know now. Villagers formed a circle around her. Some kept distance. Some stepped closer. All watched her. An elder spoke. You save our sons. You save our hall from more fire. You stand where danger stands. Why hide from us after this? Yrsa shook her head. You fear what walks alone. You fear storms that walk on 2 feet. You fear tails, but tails twist. The elder stepped closer. Then speak yours. Yrsa looked at the boys. They clung to their mother. The father held them both. She looked at the elder. My hall burned above the river. Raiders took my family. I returned to ash. I carried my grief into the hills. I walked the coast. I fought storms. I faced beasts. I guarded halls not my own. But stories grew faster than truth. Villages feared what they did not share bread with. The elder bowed his head. Your truth walks with weight. Yrsa stepped back. Your hall needs hands. Your roof needs boards. Your children need warmth. Turn your fear into strength. The elder nodded. We will. A young man stepped forward with a bundle of furs. Take these. You walk far. You hold no hall. You keep fire in your steps. Let this keep your warmth. Yrsa accepted one fur and tied it across her back. I take only enough, she said. The young man smiled. Enough still helps. Yrsa walked away as the villagers returned to their work. Snow fell thicker. The flames died. Smoke lifted in weak lines. She followed the river again. She walked until her legs grew tired. She found a low ridge and climbed it slowly. She reached the top and looked over the valley. The burned hall sat small now. The people moved like small shapes. Their shouts grew faint. Yrsa sat on a boulder. She rested her spear across her knees. "You walk with loss," she said to herself. "But loss shapes each step." She closed her eyes. Her breath warmed the air. The wind brushed the fur on her cloak. A crunch of snow sounded nearby. She opened her eyes. A figure approached. Tall, thin. A man with a long coat, his hood pulled low. He stopped a few paces away. "You face raiders today," he said. Yrsa nodded. "You follow smoke." The man lowered his hood, his hair dark, his jaw sharp. "I follow you," he said. Yrsa raised her spear slightly. "Who are you?" He spread his hands. "A watcher, a wanderer, one who heard your name long before I saw your steps. I seek proof." Yrsa frowned. "For what?" He pointed toward the valley. "They say you walk with no fear. They say storms move around you. They say you hold strength of 10 men. Yrsa looked away. "Tales grow wide." The man stepped closer. "And you deny none." Yrsa stood. "I deny pride. I deny fear. I deny false words." The man's lips curled. "Good, then face me. I seek worth. I seek challenge. You bring both." Yrsa leveled her spear. "You seek fame like the raiders." The man shrugged. "Fame feeds halls. Fame brings food. Fame gives place in feasts." Yrsa pointed her spear at him. "You face me and fall." The man drew a short blade. "Then let the fall mark my name." Yrsa stepped into stance. The man lunged. She blocked his blade with the shaft. Metal rang. Snow shifted. He swung again. She ducked and struck his ribs. He gasped, but kept his grip. He moved with speed, his steps light. He tried to cut low at her legs. She stepped aside and hit his wrist. His blade fell. She pushed him back with the spear tip near his throat. He froze. "Your name holds weight only if you live," she said. He stared at her. "Then end it." Yrsa lowered the spear. "No, you walk away. You fight no more for tales. You seek no glory on my back. You leave these valleys." The man breathed hard. "Why spare me?" Yrsa stepped close. "Because men take lives for pride. I break pride, not breath." He swallowed. He backed away. He turned and walked fast toward the hills. Yrsa watched him leave until he vanished behind the rocks. She stood alone on the ridge again. Snow fell in steady lines. The valley lay quiet. "I fight storms, raiders, beasts," she said, "but pride walks taller than all." She picked up her spear and moved toward the coast. Her steps slow, her breath steady. The day faded into pale light. Night reached the coast with slow steps. The sky turned dark blue. Stars showed through thin clouds. Yrsa walked the ridge above the shoreline with her spear across her back. Snow crunched under her boots. Her breath left light trails behind her. The land lay quiet after the raid. No fire smoked. No voices cried out. The air held only the soft hum of winter wind. She followed the ridge until it narrowed into a stone path that dropped toward the sea. The tide pulled at the rocks. Waves cracked against the shore in slow rhythm. Yrsa stepped down with care. The stone felt slick. Ice covered parts of the path. The sea sprayed thin mist into the air. At the bottom, she reached the flat ground near the old landing site. Long ago, ships came here with trade goods, long before her hall burned. The place now held only driftwood and broken pier stakes. Some stuck out of the snow like spears left by forgotten men. Yrsa walked among them. Her spear brushed one post. She paused. Marks cut into the wood, fresh cuts, strong lines, heavy blade. She touched the mark with her fingers. Not from raiders today, she said. Footsteps echoed behind her. Only one set, slow, heavy. She turned. A man stood at the base of the stone path. Broad shoulders, thick cloak, beard full, a long axe on his back. His eyes locked on her with a steady look. Not fear, not anger, something else. Yrsa raised her spear. Why follow me? The man stepped closer. I looked for you since morning. I asked halls. I asked farmers. I asked the river folk. They said you faced raiders. They said you freed children. They said you stood alone. Yrsa kept her stance. Your name. The man placed his hand on his chest. Bjorn Halvog. I lead the northern watch near the long cliffs. Yrsa said nothing. He lifted his chin. I heard of raiders who speak your name. I heard of men who brag about the day they strike down the woman who holds the coast. I travel south to stop them. My hall grows tired of men who burn farms for glory. I came to find you before they find you again. Yrsa stepped closer. Why seek me? Bjorn looked at the broken pier. Because your strength pulls storms around it. Your steps shift fear in these valleys. Men run toward it, some run from it. All speak it, but none speak truth. I came to see the truth. Yrsa tightened her grip. Truth stands simple. I guard paths others fear. I face storms. I send beasts back to the forest. I break pride. I harm no hall. Bjorn nodded. I know. I see your steps. I see your work. But pride grows wide. Some men hunt you for it. Soon more gather. Soon you face more than 5 or 10. Soon raids rise higher. Yrsa looked toward the sea. Then let them rise. I stand. Bjorn shook his head. If you fall, raiders gain a story. They use it. They spread it. They build strength from it. They point to valleys you guarded and strike them first. Yrsa frowned. You speak as if you know battle. Bjorn pointed at a scar on his arm. I fought large bands near the cliffs. I lost men to storms and blades. I held ships from striking our halls. I know when a lone fighter holds enough strength for many. You stand alone, but you shape whole coasts. Yrsa looked at him. Then speak what you want. Bjorn stepped closer. I want to walk beside you for a time. Not to lead you, not to hold your spear, only to watch the land with you, only to help when raiders gather in large bands. Your coast grows wide. One set of steps takes long paths. Yrsa said nothing for a long moment. Only the wind filled the silence. She lowered her spear slightly. People fear me. They fear storms I hold. They fear tales. They fear what walks alone. Bjorn nodded. Then let them see two shapes. Let them see truth instead of shadow. Yrsa looked away from him, toward the ridge, toward the villages, toward the marsh where Sina lived, toward the valley where her hall once stood. Her breath slowed. I walk far, she said. Bjorn nodded once. Then I walk far. Yrsa studied him again. His stance held calm strength. His breath stayed steady. His eyes did not shift away. She lifted her chin. I hold my own spear. I follow no order. Bjorn nodded. I give no order. Yrsa turned toward the sea. We walk north then, toward the cliffs tomorrow. Raiders follow that line. Bjorn stepped beside her. We leave at first light. Yrsa walked past him and climbed the stone path back to the ridge. Bjorn followed, but kept distance. When she reached the top, she looked toward the forest, toward the valley. She lifted her spear and rested it on her shoulder. I go to Sina first, she said. I tell her I leave the valley. Bjorn nodded. I wait outside her hall. They walked in silence across the marsh. The hall rose on its mound with smoke drifting from the vent. Yrsa stepped inside while Bjorn stayed outside near the crooked tree. Sina looked up from her stool. You return. Yrsa nodded. I leave again at dawn, farther this time, north along the cliffs. Sina's eyes softened. Not alone then. Yrsa stared at her. You saw him. Sina smiled. He walks with strength, but no pride. He walks like one who lost men. He walks like one who honors winter. Yrsa lowered her spear. He seeks to help. He sees raiders gather. Sina stood and placed a hand on Yrsa's arm. You spent years walking with only your grief. You faced storms until storms felt small. Let someone share one horizon, not for weight, for balance. Yrsa nodded once. I leave before the sun rises. Signa stepped back. Then eat before you go. Sit once more by this fire. Yrsa sat. Signa placed warm broth in her hands. Steam warmed her face. She drank in slow, calm sips. You walk in the old ways, Signa said, alone until the land grows quiet. But the land never grows quiet. Walk with one who knows storms. Yrsa finished the broth and stood. I return one day. Sina smiled. The door stays open when snow falls light. Yrsa stepped outside. Bjorn waited a small distance away. He watched the path. He did not look toward the hall. He gave her space. We walk north at dawn, she said. Bjorn nodded. I rest here until first light. Yrsa walked into the marsh and climbed the ridge once more. She found her rock shelter and sat inside. She placed the spear on her knees. Her breath slowed. Her eyes stayed open long into the night. Snow fell in soft sheets. Wind touched the rocks. The sea hummed far below. She whispered to the dark, I walk far again. At dawn, Yrsa rose. She took her spear and stepped out. The land stretched long and white. She walked to Sina's hall, where Bjorn already stood ready. They nodded to each other. No words needed. They crossed the marsh in silence. Their steps matched. Their breath rose in the same rhythm. They followed the river until it met the wide shore. The sea rolled in slow waves. Snow dusted its edge. As they reached the open field, the land widened. Hills rose in the distance. Cliffs stood farther north, tall and sharp. Raiders often used those cliffs as watch points. They built camps there and waited for weak hauls. Yrsa pointed forward. We reached the first cliff before dusk. Bjorn nodded. I know the path. Wolves walk that stretch in winter. Yrsa gripped her spear. Wolves walk with hunger. Hunger keeps them honest. Bjorn gave a small breath of amusement. You speak like one who walked with them. Yrsa stared ahead. I watched them near my old hall. They kept distance. They honored the dead. They honored ash. They walked until the land rose higher. Snow deepened. Trees thinned. The wind grew stronger. At the first hill crest, Bjorn stopped and crouched. Footprints, he said. Yrsa knelt beside him. She touched the prints. 6 sets, deep, fast steps, marks from heavy boots. One set dragged. Raiders again, she said. Bjorn pointed toward the cliff edge. They go to the high camp. Yrsa stood. We follow. They moved through the hills with speed. The land narrowed as it reached the cliffs. Rocks cut through the snow. The air turned sharp. Waves hit the base of the cliffs with loud cracks. Yrsa stopped and looked up. Smoke rose from the top of the cliff, thin but clear. Bjorn saw it too. A camp, he said. Yrsa gripped her spear. We climb. The cliff face held handholds carved by storms and salt. Yrsa climbed with steady breath. Bjorn climbed behind her with strong pace. Snow fell from ledges as they pulled themselves upward. They reached the top and crouched behind a rock. A camp lay ahead. 5 men sat near a fire. 2 stood guard near a pile of sacks. 1 man walked with a limp. The others spoke low. Yrsa listened. One said, The coast woman walks near. We strike her when she comes north. The one who takes her earns iron and honor, Bjorn whispered. They know you come. Yrsa nodded. Then they wait for pride, not truth. The guard held a spear. He looked out over the cliff's edge. Yrsa moved low and quiet. Snow softened her steps. She reached the guard and struck his knees. He fell. She pressed her spear to his chest. Do not shout. The guard froze. Bjorn moved behind the second guard and disarmed him. The man lifted his hands. The raiders near the fire stood fast. One grabbed his axe. One reached for his knife. Yrsa stepped into the open. Enough. The men stared at her. Surprise flashed first, then fear, then anger. The leader spoke. You come to us alone again. Yrsa shook her head. Not alone. Bjorn stepped beside her, his axe ready. The raiders looked unsure. The leader spat on the snow. 2 or 10, we fight. Yrsa raised her spear. Your fight ends now. Walk away. Leave the cliffs. Leave these coasts. The leader laughed. You hold no hall. You give no law. Yrsa stepped closer. I hold the coast. I hold the path. I hold the storm. The leader charged. Yrsa blocked his strike and pushed him off balance. Bjorn stepped in and struck another raider. The camp erupted into shouts. Snow flew from boots. Blades clashed in short bursts. Yrsa thrust her spear into the snow to pivot around one attacker. She struck his shoulder. He fell with a cry. She turned and struck another man's leg. Bjorn swung his axe and disarmed a raider before he reached the fire. The leader tried to strike Yrsa from behind. She heard his breath. She ducked and swept her spear shaft across his thigh. He dropped with one knee on the snow. She placed the spear tip near his throat. Leave this place. He stared up at her with hate. You hold no fear. Yrsa shook her head. Fear belongs to men who burn halls. You walk that path. You leave it now. He lowered his gaze. We leave. Bjorn stepped back with slow breath. They gathered their sacks. They moved down the far slope toward the north. Their steps held no pride now, only cold acceptance. When the raiders vanished, Yrsa lowered her spear. She looked at Bjorn. You fought with strength. Bjorn nodded. You fought with purpose. Yrsa looked at the horizon. Storms rise again. Raiders return again. But this path waits for steps, not tails. Bjorn looked at her with calm eyes. Then we walk it. Yrsa walked toward the cliff edge and looked down at the sea. The water hit the rocks with slow force. Snow drifted past her face. She breathed in deep. You walk with me for now, she said. Bjorn nodded. For now. They walked down the slope and left the cliff behind. The coast waited for their steps. You walk off the cliffs with Yrsa now. You leave the fire behind. Snow settles on your shoulders. The coast waits for new steps and calmer nights. More stories rise from these lands. Stories of halls restored. Stories of storms held back. Stories of wanderers who keep watch. In the next tale, you follow a trader who crossed winter seas for one promise. A calm gift waits for you then. Settle your breath. Hold warmth close. Take your rest now before the next story reaches your door.